Ukraine has recently launched a series of surprise attacks against Russian forces in multiple locations across the Kyiv region in western Russia. Andrei Kovalenko, the head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, confirmed these offensives in a brief Telegram post. He noted that the Russian military was alarmed and caught off guard on multiple fronts. As of now, there is still limited information on the full scope of Ukraine's counteroffensive, as the situation is rapidly unfolding. However, what we do know is that on January 5th, even the Russian Ministry of Defense acknowledged the offensive, which reportedly began at approximately 9 a.m. Moscow time. In one of the regions, a Ukrainian assault group comprising 2 tanks, a blocking vehicle, and 12 armored combat vehicles with infantry attempted to launch a counterattack in the direction of the town of Kyiv, with the goal of halting Russian advances. The Ukrainian forces reportedly aimed to disrupt Russian supply lines and weaken their foothold in the area. Russia claimed that it successfully repelled the attack near Badini, a strategically significant village located around 9 miles, or 15 kilometers, from the Ukrainian-Russian border. The Russian ministry also emphasized that air power played a key role in thwarting the Ukrainian offensive, with airstrikes deployed across multiple areas to weaken the assault. Moscow asserted that nearly all Ukrainian vehicles, including tanks and armored vehicles, were destroyed during the encounter. Unverified reports from other sources suggest that the Ukrainian offensive originated from the town of Suja, located along the critical A200 highway, a vital supply route for both sides in the region. Ukrainian forces reportedly advanced with surprising speed, targeting Russian positions and pushing toward the small Russian town of Bola-Soljati. The situation remains fluid, with contradictory reports emerging about the outcomes of the attack. Russian military bloggers, such as Vladimir Novakov, a prominent pro-Russian militia leader, admitted that Ukraine achieved some tactical successes, primarily due to catching Russian forces off guard. Other military blogs associated with Russia's northern group of forces indicated that Ukrainian troops were using small mobile groups, supported by armored vehicles, while Russian artillery and small arms battles continued in the area. These conflicting narratives highlight a key issue. Russia seems to be trying to downplay the impact of the attack, casting it as a clear victory, even as its own military bloggers acknowledge that Ukraine's operations are still ongoing. Some experts believe that if these Ukrainian attacks were successful, it would be a historic embarrassment for Russia, especially given its proclaimed status as a military superpower. The fact that Russia didn't anticipate these attacks, despite clear indicators, only adds to the severity of the situation. One possible reason for Ukraine's bold action is the impending shift in US leadership. With Donald Trump set to take office on January 20th, the geopolitical environment surrounding the war could change drastically. Trump had promised during his campaign to bring an end to the war quickly, with some of his statements suggesting he may prioritize peace negotiations, potentially at the expense of Ukraine's ongoing military support. Given Trump's mixed record on Ukraine, including his past criticism of US military aid to Kyiv, military analysts predicted that Ukraine might launch a bold offensive to secure valuable territory before the potential reduction in support. Ukraine's leaders likely see these final days before Trump's inauguration as their last opportunity to strengthen their position in any future peace talks. In this context, every mile of reclaimed territory becomes crucial for Ukraine. The principle of geopolitics is simple: territory equals power. If Ukraine can seize additional land before negotiations start, it would enter peace talks with a stronger position. Conversely, the stakes are also high for Russia. Moscow is facing significant logistical challenges and supply chain issues in its occupied territories. Reports from the front lines indicate that Russian morale has also suffered, as troops face both physical and psychological strain from months of conflict. This vulnerability has allowed Ukrainian forces to exploit gaps in Russian defenses through rapid and targeted offensives. Ukraine's ability to launch these mobile, precision attacks is a direct result of its military reforms. Over the course of the war, Ukraine has transformed its armed forces into one of the largest and most capable military forces in Europe, boasting nearly 1 million personnel. This has allowed them to shift focus quickly, launching counter-offensives with advanced weaponry such as US-supplied HIMARS, drones, and British Challenger 2 tanks. Ukrainian forces have consistently adapted to battlefield conditions, successfully countering Russia's reliance on human wave tactics. The Russian military, in contrast, has struggled to evolve. Despite its larger size, Russian forces have relied heavily on static defenses such as trenches and landmines. These defenses, while initially effective, have not been enough to stop Ukraine's dynamic and adaptive strategy. Ukrainian forces have consistently neutralized high-value Russian targets such as artillery positions and supply depots through precision strikes, weakening Russia's defensive capacity over time. In a surprise move, Ukraine focused its recent counter-offensive on the KSK region, which was not previously considered a primary target. Some analysts speculate that this may have been a deliberate strategy to misdirect Russian resources. By launching a concentrated attack in KSK, Ukraine might be drawing Russian troops away from more critical regions like Donetsk or Zaporizhia, leaving those areas vulnerable to future Ukrainian strikes. This kind of bait-and-switch tactic has been used effectively by Ukraine before, and it could help them gain a strategic advantage. This surprise offensive comes amid continued heavy casualties on both sides. Russia has suffered staggering losses, with some reports estimating that Russian forces have lost between 38,000 and 50,000 soldiers in the KSK region alone. This includes casualties among Russian conscripts, professional soldiers, and the ill-fated North Korean reinforcements that Putin reportedly paid $5 billion for. In contrast, Ukrainian casualties, while still significant, have been lower, and the Ukrainian military's ability to replenish its forces and maintain morale has allowed it to keep up the pressure on Russian positions. The impact of these losses is compounded by logistical and personnel challenges within Russia's military. Russian forces are reportedly facing issues with paying their troops and compensating the families of fallen soldiers. In some cases, Russian officers are accused of deliberately misclassifying fallen soldiers as missing in action to avoid paying out compensation. These issues only add to the sense of chaos within the Russian military and highlight the stark contrast between Ukraine's highly motivated, well-equipped forces and Russia's increasingly disorganized and underfunded military. As for the North Korean soldiers deployed to help Russia, the situation has been disastrous. Reports indicate that these soldiers, who were likely promised better conditions and financial benefits, have instead suffered heavy casualties. Thousands of North Korean troops have been injured, and hundreds have been killed, adding to the mounting losses for Russia. Despite the large-scale deployment of foreign troops, Russia's position in the KSK region continues to weaken. While it's still unclear what the full outcome of Ukraine's current offensive will be, the broader implications are becoming more apparent. Ukraine's military has demonstrated resilience, adaptability, and effectiveness on the battlefield, while Russia's reliance on static defenses and human wave tactics seems increasingly ineffective. The continued fighting in the KSK region could be a decisive moment in the war, and it will set the stage for the next phase of the conflict, which will undoubtedly be shaped by the diplomatic shifts in Washington following Trump's inauguration. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been vocal about the need for strong security guarantees in any potential ceasefire agreement. He has warned that a ceasefire without such guarantees could allow Russia to regroup and launch another wave of aggression, not only against Ukraine but potentially beyond its borders. Given these stakes, the current offensive in KSK may be part of Ukraine's broader strategy to secure its position before any peace negotiations take place. If Ukraine can reclaim significant territory in the coming weeks, it will enter any future negotiations from a position of strength, with the upper hand in terms of both territorial control and military capability. However, this remains a dangerous gamble, and both sides are expected to continue fighting fiercely in the days and weeks ahead. In conclusion, the war remains at a critical juncture. The outcome of the current surprise offensive in the KSK region could shape the trajectory of the conflict, especially as political changes loom on the horizon. Ukraine's ability to maintain momentum and adapt to Russian tactics could lead to significant territorial gains, but the risks of escalation remain high. Both sides are preparing for a prolonged struggle, with the future of Ukraine's military strategy and the larger geopolitical balance still uncertain.